During the early years of World War II, military planners recognized a critical weakness in traditional infantry mobility. Soldiers could march on foot or ride in trucks, but neither option provided sufficient protection once they reached the battlefield. Trucks were fast but vulnerable. Armored vehicles were protective but often slow and expensive. Into this gap stepped the M3 half-track, a hybrid solution combining the front wheels of a truck with the tracked rear of a tank. Designed to provide mobility, protection, and firepower in one package, the M3 quickly became one of the most influential vehicles in American ground warfare. It allowed infantry units to keep pace with tanks, while offering armor against small arms fire and shrapnel. Unlike earlier transport methods, the M3 could move across mud, snow, and rough terrain without bogging down easily. Its open-top design allowed soldiers to fire from inside the vehicle, transforming it into a mobile fighting platform, rather than merely a transport truck. This innovation reshaped how American infantry operated, encouraging more aggressive and coordinated tactics. Instead of arriving exhausted and exposed, troops could enter combat protected and ready. The M3 was not perfect. It had thin armor and vulnerability to heavy weapons, but it provided a balance that revolutionized mechanized warfare. In doing so, it helped redefine how infantry supported armored offensives and how combined arms doctrine evolved in the United States Army. Before America formally entered World War II, military observers studied European conflicts closely. German blitzkrieg tactics in Poland and France demonstrated the devastating impact of combining armor, air power, and mechanized infantry. The United States realized that traditional foot infantry could not keep up with fast-moving armored divisions. Inspired by such lessons, American planners sought a vehicle that could bridge the gap between tanks and trucks. The M3 half-track was developed as a response to this challenge. While not as heavily armored as tanks like the M4 Sherman, it offered speed and versatility. The Germans used similar half-tracked vehicles, but the American version focused on mass production and adaptability. The M3's design allowed it to serve multiple roles: troop carrier, machine gun platform, mortar carrier, and even anti-aircraft vehicle. This flexibility meant that the same chassis could be adapted for various battlefield needs, simplifying logistics. When U.S. forces began large-scale operations in North Africa and Europe, the M3 proved its worth by allowing infantry to stay closely integrated with armored units. Instead of lagging behind, soldiers could ride directly into contested zones. This mobility dramatically increased operational tempo and reduced vulnerability during advances. The adoption of the M3 was not merely about copying European designs, it was about refining them for American production capabilities and strategic needs. The result was a vehicle that became central to U.S. mechanized infantry doctrine throughout the war. Mobility has always been a decisive factor in warfare, and the M3 half-track dramatically enhanced the mobility of American infantry. Traditional infantry movements were slow and exhausting, limiting how quickly forces could exploit breakthroughs. With the M3, infantry units could move rapidly across varied terrain while remaining protected. This mobility allowed U.S. commanders to execute more dynamic offensives. When tanks punched through enemy lines, half-tracks could immediately follow, ensuring infantry support was present to secure captured ground. In campaigns across North Africa, Italy, and Western Europe, the M3 proved invaluable in navigating muddy roads and rough landscapes. Its tracked rear provided traction where wheeled vehicles would fail. Soldiers appreciated the balance of speed and protection, even if the open top left them exposed to artillery airbursts. The vehicle's ability to mount heavy machine guns also meant it could provide suppressive fire while moving. This transformed infantry from passive riders into active combat participants. The shift toward mechanized movement reduced delays between engagement phases and enabled rapid exploitation of enemy weaknesses. The M3's mobility also facilitated flanking maneuvers, reinforcing the American emphasis on maneuver warfare. By reducing the gap between armored spearheads and supporting troops, the half-track increased the overall effectiveness of combined operations. In this way, mobility became not just a logistical advantage, but a strategic weapon that reshaped battlefield dynamics. Although lightly armored, the M3 half-track provided a significant psychological and tactical advantage. Infantry riding in open trucks often felt exposed and vulnerable. The M3's steel armor, while not impervious, could stop small arms fire and shrapnel, offering reassurance to troops. This sense of protection boosted morale and confidence during advances. The presence of mounted machine guns, typically a .50 caliber, allowed soldiers to respond immediately to ambushes. Instead of scrambling out of trucks under fire, they could engage the enemy directly from the vehicle. The psychological impact extended beyond American troops. Enemy forces often perceived T.E. mechanized infantry as more formidable due to their mobility and firepower. The M3 also reduced casualties during transport phases, preserving combat effectiveness. While artillery and anti-tank weapons could penetrate its armor, the vehicle was never intended to replace tanks. Rather, it provided a balanced compromise between mobility and survivability. This balance enabled infantry units to operate more aggressively. The knowledge that they were not entirely exposed during movement encouraged faster advances and bolder tactics. Over time, this shift influenced American doctrine, reinforcing the value of mechanized support. The M3's protection may have been limited in thickness, but its contribution to confidence and operational efficiency was profound. One of the most transformative aspects of the M3 half-track was the way it turned infantry transport into a mobile weapons platform. Unlike standard trucks, the M3 was typically equipped with a mounted .50 caliber M2 Browning machine gun, and often additional .30 caliber machine guns. This meant that infantry units were no longer dependent solely on dismounting before bringing heavy firepower into action. They could suppress enemy positions while advancing, creating momentum that traditional foot soldiers struggled to achieve. The mounted weapons provided immediate response capability during ambushes, particularly in the hedgerows of Normandy or the narrow mountain passes of Italy. In urban environments, half-tracks could deliver covering fire as troops maneuvered between buildings. The ability to fire from a moving or stationary protected position fundamentally changed engagement tactics. Infantry squads became more flexible and deadly, capable of laying down sustained fire without waiting for separate support units. This integration of mobility and firepower shortened reaction times and increased battlefield survivability. The M3 effectively blurred the line between transport and combat vehicle. Instead of acting merely as a taxi to the front lines, it became an active participant in the fight. By embedding heavy weapons directly within infantry formations, the half-track amplified the offensive punch of American mechanized units and helped redefine how fire and movement were coordinated in World War II combat operations. World War II cemented the importance of combined arms warfare, the coordinated use of infantry, armor, artillery, and air power. The M3 half-track played a crucial role in making this doctrine practical for American forces. Tanks such as the M4 Sherman could spearhead attacks, but without infantry protection, they were vulnerable to anti-tank weapons and ambushes. The M3 allowed infantry to move in close coordination with armored units, maintaining pace across rough terrain. This partnership ensured that tanks were not isolated, and that enemy anti-tank teams could be quickly neutralized. The half-track also facilitated communication and command flexibility, as officers could move rapidly between units while remaining protected. Artillery observers and specialized teams often used modified versions of the vehicle, strengthening coordination across branches. By physically linking infantry mobility to armored advances, the M3 made combined arms tactics more fluid and responsive. Rather than separate elements operating at different speeds, mechanized infantry and tanks functioned as an integrated force. This cohesion was especially visible during rapid advances across France, after D-Day, where speed and coordination were essential. The M3 became a symbol of modern mechanized warfare, demonstrating how transportation, protection, and firepower could be unified. Its contribution extended beyond tactical engagements. It helped institutionalize a doctrine that would shape American military operations long after World War II ended. The versatility of the M3 half-track allowed it to serve effectively in multiple theaters of World War II. From the deserts of North Africa to the forests of the Ardennes, its hybrid wheel and track system proved adaptable to diverse conditions. In the sandy terrain of North Africa, where American forces first faced major Axis opposition, the half-track's mobility helped compensate for challenging landscapes. During operations such as Operation Torch, mechanized mobility was essential for maintaining operational momentum. In Italy's mountainous regions, the vehicle transported troops along narrow, winding roads, where full-tracked tanks were less practical. In the snowy forests during the Battle of the Bulge, the half-track's traction offered an advantage over purely wheeled vehicles. This adaptability reduced the need for entirely new vehicle designs for each environment, simplifying logistics and production. Furthermore, The M3's chassis was modified into mortar carriers, anti-aircraft platforms, and command vehicles. This modularity meant the same basic vehicle could fulfill numerous battlefield roles. The capacity to adapt quickly to local tactical needs enhanced operational flexibility. Soldiers grew familiar with the vehicle's strengths and limitations, allowing them to maximize its effectiveness in different combat scenarios. The M3's ability to perform reliably across continents reinforced its status as a backbone of American mechanized infantry forces during the war. A key reason the M3 half-track had such a transformative impact was America's industrial capacity to produce it in large numbers. Unlike some complex armored vehicles that required extensive maintenance, the M3 was relatively simple and utilized many commercial truck components. This design choice streamlined manufacturing and repairs. Thousands of half-tracks rolled off assembly lines, ensuring widespread distribution among U.S. and Allied forces. Standardization simplified spare parts supply chains and training procedures for mechanics. The ability to repair vehicles quickly kept units operational and minimize downtime. In a global conflict where logistics often determine success or failure, the M3's practicality proved invaluable. The United States leveraged its industrial strength to equip entire mechanized divisions with reliable transport. This abundance allowed commanders to plan operations confidently, knowing mobility assets were available. The vehicle's cost-effectiveness also meant it could be supplied to allied nations through Lend-Lease programs. By combining efficiency, affordability, and battlefield utility, the M3 exemplified how industrial strategy directly influenced military effectiveness. Its production scale ensured that mechanized infantry doctrine was not limited to elite units, but became standard practice across large formations. Thus, the half-track was not just a tactical innovation, it was a logistical triumph that enabled widespread modernization of American infantry warfare. The impact of the M3 half-track did not end with World War II. Its success laid the groundwork for the development of fully armored personnel carriers in the post-war era. Military planners recognized both its strengths and its vulnerabilities, particularly the open-top design that left troops exposed to artillery and airbursts. These lessons influenced later vehicles like the M113 armored personnel carrier, which featured fully enclosed armor and improved protection. The M3 demonstrated that mechanized infantry was not merely a supporting element, but an essential component of modern warfare. It validated the concept that infantry must move with armor, protected and prepared to fight immediately upon arrival. The vehicle's versatility also inspired future modular designs capable of carrying specialized equipment. By bridging the gap between simple trucks and fully armored carriers, the M3 represented a transitional but crucial step in mechanized evolution. Its battlefield performance influenced doctrinal thinking for decades. Armies worldwide studied its strengths and incorporated mechanized transport into their own forces. In this way, the M3 half-track's legacy extended far beyond the battlefields of World War II. It reshaped how militaries envisioned infantry mobility and set the stage for the armored personnel carriers and infantry fighting vehicles that dominate modern mechanized warfare today. The introduction of the M3 half-track did not just influence large-scale operations, it fundamentally altered tactics at the squad and platoon level. Before mechanization, infantry units often arrived at battle fatigued from long marches, reducing their combat effectiveness. With the M3, soldiers could conserve energy during movement and dismount ready to engage immediately. This shift allowed small units to execute more complex maneuvers. Squads could rapidly redeploy to exploit weak points, reinforce threatened sectors, or conduct flanking actions with unprecedented speed. The half-track also enabled fire and movement tactics to become more dynamic. While one element dismounted and advanced, the vehicle's mounted machine guns could provide suppressive fire. This coordination increased survivability and reduced exposure during assaults. Platoon leaders gained flexibility in positioning their forces, knowing transport and support were readily available. The psychological confidence of having armored mobility further empowered junior officers to take initiative. Rather than being tied to fixed positions, infantry units became fluid and responsive. The M3 effectively turned static formations into mobile strike teams. By integrating transport, protection, and firepower at the squad level, the half-track reshaped the very rhythm of infantry combat. This transformation in small unit tactics multiplied across divisions, amplifying the overall effectiveness of American ground forces during World War II. Another major advantage of the M3 half-track was its adaptability into specialized support variants. As air power became increasingly dominant during World War II, protecting ground troops from low-flying aircraft was essential. Modified versions of the M3 were equipped with anti-aircraft gun mounts, including multiple heavy machine guns and automatic cannons. These variants provided mobile air defense for advancing columns. During rapid movements across Europe, mechanized units often outran fixed anti-aircraft defenses. The half-track-based systems ensured protection could keep pace with armored spearheads. This flexibility extended beyond air defense. Some M3s were converted into mortar carriers, enabling indirect fire support that could reposition quickly as battle lines shifted. Others served as command vehicles, radio platforms, or medical evacuation units. The shared chassis simplified maintenance and logistics across these roles. Instead of developing entirely new vehicles for each function, the U.S. Army adapted the M3's reliable design. This versatility increased operational resilience. If battlefield conditions changed, units could reassign or modify vehicles to meet new demands. The M3 thus became more than a troop carrier. It was a foundation for a range of combat support functions. By embedding anti-aircraft and fire support capabilities directly within mechanized formations, the half-track strengthened the independence and self-sufficiency of American infantry units in fast-moving campaigns. The European theater of operations provided some of the most demanding tests for the M3 half-track. Following the D-Day landings during Operation Overlord, Allied forces needed to push inland quickly while maintaining cohesion between infantry and armor. The bocage terrain of Normandy, with its dense hedgerows and narrow lanes, posed significant mobility challenges. While tanks could break through obstacles, infantry and half-tracks ensured that ground gained was immediately secured. The M3's ability to traverse rough paths allowed American mechanized units to maneuver effectively despite environmental constraints. During the rapid advance across France, speed became critical. German defenses were often thinly spread, and exploiting breakthroughs required swift, coordinated action. The M3 facilitated these advances by keeping infantry aligned with armored thrusts. In the Battle of the Bulge, winter conditions tested the vehicle's traction and reliability. Despite harsh weather, the half-track maintained operational mobility where many wheeled vehicles struggled. Soldiers relied on it to reposition quickly against surprise German offensives. These experiences demonstrated the M3's resilience under diverse combat pressures. Its consistent performance in Europe solidified its reputation as an indispensable component of American mechanized warfare. Despite its many strengths, the M3 half-track was not without flaws. Its armor was relatively thin, offering protection mainly against small arms and shrapnel, rather than heavy anti-tank weapons. The open-top design exposed soldiers to artillery airbursts and grenades. In intense combat zones, this vulnerability became evident. Enemy forces learned to target half-tracks with anti-tank rifles, artillery, and mines. The vehicle's height also made it more visible on the battlefield. However, these limitations must be understood within context. The M3 was never intended to function as a tank substitute. Its purpose was to balance mobility, protection, and firepower at a manageable cost. Commanders adapted tactics accordingly, avoiding direct confrontation with heavily fortified positions without tank support. Crews sometimes improvised additional armor plating or sandbags for extra protection. Even with its weaknesses, the M3 offered a dramatic improvement over unarmored trucks. The trade-offs reflected the realities of wartime production and operational priorities. Rather than striving for perfection, the United States prioritized practical effectiveness and quantity. The M3's limitations also provided valuable lessons for future armored personnel carrier designs, emphasizing the need for improved protection and enclosed troop compartments in post-war vehicles. The influence of the M3 half-track extended beyond American forces. Through Lend-Lease programs, the United States supplied half-tracks to Allied nations, including Britain and the Soviet Union. These vehicles enhanced mechanized capabilities across coalition armies. Allied commanders appreciated the balance of mobility and firepower, integrating the M3 into their own tactical doctrines. In multinational operations, shared equipment improved interoperability and logistical coordination. The half-track became a common sight in Allied columns advancing across Europe. Its presence symbolized not only American industrial power, but also the collaborative effort of the Allied war machine. The widespread distribution of the M3 reinforced mechanized infantry principles on a global scale. Nations that operated the vehicle gained first-hand experience with combined arms integration. This shared mechanized framework strengthened cooperation during joint offensives. By equipping partners with reliable transport and combat support vehicles, the United States amplified the overall effectiveness of Allied ground operations. The M3 thus played both a tactical and diplomatic role, reinforcing alliances through practical military support. Its global deployment ensured that the evolution of mechanized infantry warfare was not confined to one nation, but became a defining feature of Allied strategy during World War II. In retrospect, the M3 half-track represents a pivotal moment in the evolution of infantry warfare. It bridged the gap between traditional foot soldiers and fully mechanized forces. By integrating mobility, protection, and firepower into a single platform, it transformed how infantry units operated on the battlefield. The vehicle demonstrated that mechanized infantry could match the speed of armored formations while retaining flexibility and adaptability. Its widespread use institutionalized combined arms doctrine within the U.S. Army. The lessons learned from its strengths and weaknesses directly influence the design of later armored personnel carriers and infantry fighting vehicles. More importantly, the M3 changed the mindset of military planners. Infantry were no longer seen as slow-moving support elements, but as dynamic partners in rapid offensives. The ability to transport, deploy, and support troops efficiently became a core principle of modern warfare. Though eventually replaced by more advanced designs, the M3's impact endured. It marked the transition from improvised mobility solutions to standardized mechanized doctrine. In doing so, it helped shape the character of 20th century warfare and laid the groundwork for the highly mobile integrated infantry forces that define modern military operations.